Think you're too busy to learn a new language? Think again. Today I will be sharing my tried and tested strategies to fit language learning into a busy and full-packed schedule. Over the years, I had a very busy schedule, yet still managed to make tangible progress in learning new languages. I know very well how it feels like to be completely overwhelmed by other things and still have to think about language learning. But trust me, if you make it a priority and have the appropriate strategy to deal with language learning, it is not that difficult to fit it into your busy schedule. So in this video, I'll walk you through a simple, realistic, and effective strategy to learn a language, even when your calendar is full. Whether you're learning for travel, work, studies, or just personal growth, these tips will surely help integrate language learning into your everyday life without making it too much of a hassle. So, are you ready? Let's go! Step number 1 is always know your why and what motivates you. So knowing your why and clarifying that will really help you set your goals and break it down into smaller chunks as well. So for example, if you want to just have a conversation with a native person, that can be goals that motivate you. Instead of just saying, I want to be fluent, you can have these goals in mind and then break it down to smaller chunks. So for example, if your goal is to, say, read a novel in German, then your first step might be to read a small story, like a kid's story in German, and understand it. Then progress onto a longer novel, something for teenagers or something that is at a more intermediate level, and then advance onto more advanced novels. So ultimately, having a clear purpose and a goal will make it easier for you to focus on your goals, prioritize it, and make progress. Having these small goals will also mean that you will be more motivated as you celebrate these small wins. So even things like learning 20 new words a day might be something that you can celebrate. And being consistent with these small goals will mean that you stay motivated for a way longer time. And if needed, the goal for you can just be consistency on its own, whether that's something very small or just showing up 5 minutes every single day to learn that language. Then, knowing what motivates you, not just in the context of language learning, but overall, can really be helpful. For example, I realized recently that I am a very competitive person, which can also translate very well into language learning. So if I find someone who's at a slightly higher level than I am in my vicinity and is learning a bit faster than I am, then that really motivates me to really put in the effort and not fall behind. Again, this does not work if the person is at a native level or way further ahead of me, because that just doesn't trigger this feeling for me. However, this can be very hard to artificially trigger or just to find a person like that if you're studying alone. And that is where my step 2 comes into play. Reduce your barrier. I get it. You're busy, there's a lot of other things you need to do, and language learning might be the last thing that you want to sit down to do after a long day at school or work. So, with all habits, one of the key points of making them stick is to reduce the barrier. One of the ways can be using micro learning sessions. So this means you're using the dead time around the day, for example, while you're waiting for the microwave or the kettle. Even that amount of time can really compound over time. So if you can review flashcards while you wait for your meal to heat up, for example, that can really add up. And because you've got to presumably eat every day, that will also help you keep consistent. Or you can also listen to a podcast while you're doing some sort of housework. And these kind of small habits that you integrate into your daily life do not take any extra time, but they utilize your dead time and also help you stay a bit more consistent, even with smaller learning sessions. My favorite tool that I always talk to people about for microlearning is Anki. Now, Anki is a flashcard app with built-in spaced repetition intervals, and it really helps me to squeeze in these bite-sized learning sessions throughout the day. Now, that is something that really worked for me before. Now I use a slightly different tactic, which I will talk to you about in the next section of the video. However, you can use any other language apps like Duolingo, Memrise, and so on to really utilize these small chunks of time to get a bit of language learning in. Another good way you can integrate language learning is actually to narrate what you're doing throughout the day. So while you're doing stuff around the house, you might be saying, oh, I'm putting the fork away, I'm washing the dishes, I'm putting the laundry in, I'm taking the laundry out, I'm hanging the clothes up to dry, and so on and so forth. The great thing about this is it is actually actively encouraging you to form your own sentences, words, and you will also try to use the words that are normally around you every single day. So this helps you a lot when you are also a beginner, advanced, intermediate level, all levels, because you can just expand on the vocabulary, you can talk about your environment, your feelings, your plans, so on and so forth. So just use that time during the day when you're doing something that is not so intensive in your brain to practice a bit of speaking that language or just thinking in that language for a while. So, what is your biggest barrier to learning the language? Now, it might actually be time, but it also might be motivation, but you say it's the time. So, you have to think about this carefully. But if it's actually truly time, use these tips to help you along the way and actually integrate it into your everyday life in a way that doesn't take too much extra time. However, even with this, my step number 3 is the most important one, which is staying consistent with a system. Consistency beats intensity every single time. So even if you study only 10 minutes a day, if you do it consistently, that will have a much greater impact than if you only study once for 12 hours or so. So to make this happen, you need to create a simple system that works for you or a set of habits. For example, for me, what worked when I was in high school and university was time blocking. But before you click away, currently that does not work for me, unfortunately, because I found that currently sticking to the time blocking requires too much discipline, which in turn burns me out very quickly because it drains me to try to stick to these timelines, even when I feel like my flow is going a bit differently throughout the workday. Also, with time blocking, I found that there is a disadvantage that I was putting it in my own calendar, only I was involved, so it was very easy for me mentally to just say, oh, well, I'll do it another time and reschedule. I also used to have a private tutor every single week, and that worked out very well for a long amount of time. However, after a while, when I started getting busy, I started telling the teacher to make the classes a bit more infrequently, and so after a while, I just fell off the language learning journey. So now actually what works for me currently is to attend the language course every Tuesday and Thursday. Currently this works very well for me because it is in my calendar, it involves other people, I can't reschedule it, and I already paid the money. So my Asian frugal genes are telling me if I'm not going, I'm wasting my money. That means I will show up for every single class even if I'm not feeling in the mood to do so. And I'm always so glad that I do because I end up progressing along the way. This also helps with pacing because I cannot set my own pace and I have to keep up no matter what. So again, this is what works for my current life, but back in the day, something else worked. This just proves to you the importance of finding a system that works in your current timeline, in the current life situation, and how you are feeling at the current moment. As for vocabulary learning, for example, I used to, don't tell my teachers, review some words from the notebook during some very boring lessons in high school. Now, of course, after getting out of high school and uni, that time just vanished because there's no such thing during work anymore, and I had to rely a bit more on Anki. But I struggled for a very long time to keep myself consistent with Anki because I would just say during the day, whenever I have the time, I would do it, but never actually ended up having the time. So, what works for me currently is I swapped out browsing social media in the morning while I'm still in bed trying to get myself out of bed, and I swapped it over to Anki. I still get my time lying in bed half awake, but I use it for something way more productive. And this actually meant that I did not miss any single day in doing Anki flashcards. With this said, again, find something that works for you and stick to it. It might very well be that that will differ based on your life situation, how things progress in your life otherwise, and your general personality and mood that can change over time as well. So find something that you can stick to that really helps you to stay consistent because remember, consistency is what builds momentum. So, are you ready to learn your dream language even with a busy schedule? Let me know in the comments what your biggest challenges are when it comes to language learning, and don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell to get notified about new videos on career, expat life, language learning, productivity, and self-improvement. So I'll see you in the next video. Happy learning! Bye bye!